evidence-based foundation for our therapies. So our goal here is to better understand the lifestyle factors that lead to cancer and how best to cancer-proof yourself. Isn't that a good word? Cancer-proof? It's like waterproof, right? You have a waterproof watch? You want to be cancer-proof. So we're going to talk about diet, we'll talk about lifestyle, we'll talk about toxins, we'll talk about the mind. But I want to start in with the big ones, Start the list with the most important, the most impactful. And I'm going to make a case for what's the most important, the things that have the biggest impact on why people get cancer. Are you ready? Let's hit it off. Red meat and dairy products double your risk of metastatic prostate cancer. It's said that if you eat meat once in your life, you get an increased risk of cancer. And I'll show you why here. But you certainly don't want to continue if you are using meat because, well, a lot of it has to do with the protein. The protein, and I'll tell you, not all protein is created equal, okay? Not all protein is created equal. What do I mean by that? Protein is made up of like 20 different amino acids. I can have a protein that's just 3 amino acids. That'll be different than a protein that has a different 3 amino acids. And so animal protein is overrepresented in some of the worst amino acids. Methionine, cysteine, so forth. Whereas vegetable protein doesn't have as much of those, has a better distribution of amino acids that make up the protein. And it usually takes animal protein to up your protein intake, but a high protein diet, which is what most Americans are on, if 25% of their calories come from protein, increases your risk of cancer by 2-3-fold. Somebody was asking about protein in the last session, right? And whereas if you're on a lower protein diet, like 5% of your calories coming from protein, then your risk of cancer is much lower. And somebody who asked there about protein, I mentioned about tomatoes. Tomatoes protect you against cancers of the mouth, esophagus, stomach, colon, rectum, prostate. And people might ask, how can you compare tomatoes to, beef? Well, it's practically the same protein content. It just takes a lot more tomatoes to make 100 calories. But it's still 16-17% of it is protein. It's hard to get on a low protein diet. So animal protein increases cancer. The studies show that. The nutritionists have proved that. Now, animal protein isn't the only component of meat. There's also the component of fat. Here's a study looking at breast cancer. Notice across the bottom we have the amount of fat in the diet. Up the side we have death rate from breast cancer. If we look at the countries, they all line up on the line. The more animal fat they eat, the more people they have dying of breast cancer. Notice America, USA, we're way up there at the top. High animal fat intake, high death rate from breast cancer. Notice at the very bottom we have Thailand and Japan. But those Japanese, they move from Tokyo to LA, they start eating what everybody in LA eats. And in a couple of generations, their death rate from breast cancer equals the local population. No genetics there that's helping them, just their original good diet, which is low on meat. See, in the early 1900s, people's plate of food would have a little bit of meat as a garnish and vegetables and potatoes and rice and so forth. Today, they have a big chunk of meat and a garnish of peas and carrots or something, parsley. And so the meat has taken over the plate and pushed off the vegetables, and so cancer rates have gone up, and so has the amount of fat people eat. And so this is breast cancer. Now let me just clue you in that if something is raising breast cancer, which is usually hormonally involved, it's probably also going to be predicted that it raises prostate cancer. And this is true in this case. So saturated fat triples your risk of dying from prostate cancer. So animal fat plays a role. You're thinking, wow, I don't eat animal fat. What kind of fat do you eat? I eat vegetable fat. Well, I saw an interesting study where they compared vegetarians and meat eaters from Phoenix. And what really struck me is whereas the meat eaters were getting about 36% of their calories from fat, the vegetarians were getting 46% of their calories from fat. I'm thinking, why? What from? Bottled oils. And bottled oils, processed bottled oils, quadruple your risk of breast and stomach cancer. Coldwell Esselstyn, the one I quoted on heart disease, has also been quoted to say that if you're using bottled oils, it's not if you'll get cancer, but when. And I have a whole talk on just bottled oils. It takes an hour long, and we go into all, don't use oils from a plastic bottle. That plastic will be in the oil. You can be eating plastic. Plastic is not good for you, and so forth. Now, one of the things that oils do for you is the oils make any fat-based molecules in your body more active. It's like it carries them, it pushes them, it activates them. And all your hormones are fat-based. So the more oil you have in your body, the more your hormones do funny things. They're overactive, or they impact you more. And hormones aren't great. So oral contraceptive pills greatly increase the risk of cancer. Hormone replacement therapy, I don't want to have hot flashes. I'll go on Primpro. I'll go on Premarin. No, that's playing with fire, and it increases endometrial cancer, ovarian cancer, breast cancer. But eating lots of fats does the same thing in essentially increasing the effects of these hormones. Well, let's talk about other sources of these hormones. When you gain weight, and you have extra fat cells or extra fat in your cells, your fat cells are not just padding, they produce hormones themselves. And so if a woman gets breast cancer and she's overweight, it's very hard to control the impact of the hormones from those fat cells on her breast cancer. Her prognosis is much worse, as well as the risk is much worse. But it's not just breast cancer. It's cancer of the breast, prostate, cervix, uterus, ovary, all increase with increasing weight. So fat cells are a source of these hormones. Pills are a source of these hormones. But also animal products. You see, here I have a graph to illustrate this. The first column is one woman. One woman, if her estradiol, one of the estrogens, if her estradiol goes over 9 units, then her risk of breast cancer goes up 7-fold. So you don't want to go over 9 for sure. But look, one chunk of cheese has 3. So she's already at 9 and she eats a chunk of cheese. She just raised her estradiol levels by a third. A pat of butter, 4. So she just raised her estradiol levels by, 45%. European beefsteak, 4.3. Well, why did I pick on a European beefsteak? You remember when there was a big argument between Europe and America, and Europeans were saying, don't send us your beef? And during that time, a lot of research came out to highlight or to support why they didn't want American beef in Europe. Because American beef had 5 times as much hormones. Because we learned if we give cattle hormones, we can get 20% more cow on the same amount of feed. And you eat that cow and you can gain 20% more weight on the same amount of cow. And you also get a boatload of hormones which cause cancer. I was giving a talk like this at a meeting. A lady came who had spent years in Thailand as an English teacher. During that time, the fast food industry moved into Thailand and people started eating a lot more fast food meats. She said in the years before the fast food meat industry moved in, she would be in a class of teenage girls, and she was the only one in the class that was wearing a bra. When the meat industry moved in, and these are 12 to 14-year-olds, when the meat industry moved in, pretty soon there was no girl without a bra. Things grow with hormones, and it's not just supposed to grow. Skim milk, 1 liter, 18. It's because they give those cows Prosolac, a hormone, to make more milk. Eggs, 2 eggs. Now, I started my practice up in Iowa. Iowa, there's a lot of meat produced in Iowa. And I had a real education to, I was sheltered, I guess. I grew up on a wheat farm. But I was in Iowa, and one day in came a patient. It was a father and the son. The son had fallen down and broken his wrist. I sent him off to X-ray, and I was talking with the dad, and I says, "Well, where do you work?" And he says, "Well, I work at the protein factory in the town down the road." And I said, "The protein factory?" He says, "Yeah." I said, "So what do you do in the protein factory?" He says, "Well, we get all the hog bones from your slaughter plant here in your town." Well, the slaughter plant in my town slaughtered 14,000 hogs a day. Trucks came from Nebraska, from Canada, from Minnesota, from everywhere to keep that plant going with 14,000 hogs a day. And all those bones went to the protein factory. I says, "That's a lot of bones." He says, "It is." I says, "What do you do with, all these bones?" He says, "Well, we put them in a big vat, and we cook them for 4 hours. All the fat and stuff like that comes to the top. We scoop it off, and we put it in cans, and we sell it to the restaurants as soup base." I'm thinking, where did I eat soup last? I said, "So you make soup base?" "Oh," he says, "that's not all we make." I said, "Really? What else do you make?" He says, "Well, the rest of it, we put it into we put it into containers, and for seasonings." I'm like, "Seasonings? Seasonings?" And he could see my puzzlement. He says, "Yeah, it makes everything taste better." I says, well, what would your seasonings be called?" He says, "Oh, natural flavors." I said, "No, wait a minute. I was down at the supermarket the other day. I bought a bag of dried apricots. Besides being sulfured and whatever, it said that they had natural flavors." I said, "Could that be some of your hog bones?" He says, "We make an awful lot of it." Like, yeah? Oh. Well, what do I do about all these hormones? Well, you can eat things that are hormone blockers, like soy. Don't tell the dairy industry you're doing this. The dairy industry has everybody believing that these phytoestrogens will make little girls out of little boys. Not so. The people that eat the most soy in the world are Okinawans. They're also the originators of karate. Oh, yeah. So anyway, the flax. But why don't you hear the dairy industry saying bad things about flax? Flax has 50% more phytoestrogens than soy per ounce. So it's like a lot more. But you don't hear everybody saying, "Don't eat flax, you'll turn into a little girl if you're a little boy." Because they don't make milk out of flax, right? Okay. Turmeric. Anyway, these things have counteracting effects. They're a weak estrogen. They plug up the estrogen receptors so that the estradiol doesn't come in and cause problems. And so they're very healthy. Other things that have phytoestrogens are actually your cruciferous vegetables. And they will increase your urinary excretion. You'll pee out more hormones if you're eating these kind of things. So eat 1 egg and then eat a head of cabbage, right? Well, I don't know what the ratio is there, but they're both round. Yes, good food. Another thing that'll help balance hormones is exercise. So any of you ladies who are, thinking about menopause, I'm giving you a lot of hints here. You certainly want to stay away from animal products and get exercise and eat cruciferous vegetables and soy and flax and turmeric. All right, so exercise. If you're fit, you're getting exercise a lot and you're in good shape, your death rate from cancer cuts down in more than half. Fit people live longer. How many want to be fit? All right, good. It's like the old riddle. There's 3 frogs sitting on a log. They decide to jump in the lake. How many frogs are still on the log? 3, because they decided, but they hadn't actually put the decision into practice. You got to put the decision or the thought into practice, right? Okay, when I was a medical student, they used to stand us all up and they'd bring in a patient, and one day they brought in a patient and they stood us all up and they said, okay, and I got to be the guy on the hot spot, and they said, Dr. Clark. Yes? Look at the patient. Okay. Tell us what you think they have. Well, the patient rolled up their pant leg, and on the front of their leg they had a raised purple area about the size of my little finger and about half as long. And I looked at that and I said, well, does the patient have Kaposi's sarcoma? And the teacher says, well, yes, that's exactly right. And why do you think they have it? Well, usually the reason they would have Kaposi's sarcoma is because they have AIDS. And here we are, a whole group, and that's not a popular thing to discuss in front of your peers. I mean, everybody, if you're a patient and you have AIDS, that's not socially, the best thing. Well, so I said, well, is the patient HIV positive? And the attending physician says, well, no, that would be the number one reason why they'd have Kaposi's sarcoma, but no, in this case, they don't have AIDS. They have had a kidney transplant, and they are on immunosuppressive drugs so the body won't reject the kidney, but in wiping out the immune system, Kaposi's sarcoma was able to come in them, just like in an AIDS patient. And I got to thinking, you mean anything that wipes out your immune system can make it so that you can get cancer? And sure enough, because AIDS is a virus, but so is Kaposi's sarcoma. And the AIDS virus wipes out the immune system, and the Kaposi's sarcoma virus is no longer suppressed by the immune system, and it can grow, and you get these skin lesions that are cancer. Really? People that work in meatpacking plants show high levels of having been exposed to viruses by testing their blood. These guys in your local supermarket that work behind the counter, cutting big chunks of meat into small chunks of meat where the blade is going through the meat and it's spinning and it's putting blood in the air and bits of meat in the air, and they breathe it in. They get more lung cancer. They get more lymphoma, that's cancer of lymph nodes. They get more leukemia, that's cancer of the blood. All from viruses from these animals, zoonotic viruses that cross species. And so, women with breast cancer have 3 times the incidence of infection with bovine leukemia virus, a virus common in dairy cattle and their milk. Does it make any sense that if you're using an animal's product from its breast, you might get a breast disease? And that it might be mediated by a virus? And it's true, all around the globe. The more dairy products, the more bovine leukemia virus, the more breast cancer. All around the globe. Well, what else will wipe out your immune system? Sugar. Thank you. Sugar. And the more sugar you eat, the worse. But a high sugar intake Increases breast cancer by 40%, prostate cancer by 60%, ovarian cancer by 70%. I mean, you can see the whole look at melanoma. But I thought melanoma was from getting too much sun. Well, sun can certainly play a role if you get burned, but if you get melanoma and you hide from the sun, your prognosis is worse than if you go out in the sun. Sun isn't the cause unless you burn, but the sun is actually helpful. And so melanoma, we talked about in our cholesterol talk this morning that if you're high in cholesterol, especially oxidized cholesterol, you get skin cancer. That would include melanoma. Here it's sugar and also regular oils. Earlier we pointed out bottled oils. And so the real cause is a lot of lifestyle things of processed foods and animal products. I mean, speaking of processed foods, anything that would give a diabetic a high blood sugar, which isn't just sugar, it's white rice, white flour products, white bread, white pasta, white tortillas, box cereals. Box cereals are not that healthy. In fact, I have a study in my hypertension talk, high blood pressure talk, where the researchers' job was to feed their rats a bunch of box cereals and see what it did to their blood pressure. They did. It gave them high blood pressure, but the researchers in their discussion said this was a very, very hard study. It was very hard to keep enough rats alive to finish the study. They died when they were fed box cereal. Oh boy. I mean, when they make that box cereal, they have to cook it until they can spray it through nozzles into flakes or into Cheerios or into whatever. And it is dead, and oxidized. And so you want whole grains, right? You want good whole grains because whole grains reduce cancer risk. Whole grain intake is associated with a lower cancer in all kinds of sites all over the body, especially colorectal, gastric, pancreatic, esophageal, all these cancers. Whole grains are loaded with good vitamins and minerals, and yeah, you want to get them organic, but each 30 grams per day intake of whole grains was associated with a 7% lower risk of cancer mortality. And 30 grams isn't much for grains, right? And so now, some people, when they get cancer, they all of a sudden get the idea they should be drinking juice. Let me just start drinking juice. But people who drink juice, or carbonated drinks for that matter, it quadruples the risk of stomach cancer. You weren't made to run on liquid food. You're made to chew your food and to have all the fiber with it and to separate it out on your own in your natural way. So keep that in mind. All right, let's look at some other aspects why meat is the number one cause of cancer. And it has to do with this also. Meat is, it's protein. It's really the muscles off of some animal most of the time, unless you're looking at organ meats. And these muscles are very hard to digest. And so, like for example, a cat, like a lion, has 10 times as much stomach acid as a human being. So they can digest this protein. It's all, well, if you look at a muscle, it's got all kinds of fibers that are interlocked. Actin and myosin, and the acid has to unlock all those fibers. And when you add all that extra acid, it changes the proteins, which are nitrogen-based amino acids, nitrogen-based acids, into heterocyclic amines, which is nitrogen-based carcinogens. Carcinogen is what causes cancer, and nitrosyl compounds. And when you eat that stuff and it turns into these things in your stomach and it goes in your small intestine, all the cells lining your small intestine start taking these carcinogens in and in the large intestine, and you end up with cells that are getting toxic from these toxic products from the meat. And they start getting polyps, and then they get cancers, and then they plug up the colon, and then you get a colostomy, and then goes downhill from there. And all because of the way in which the meat is processed in your stomach. What do I do about that? Well, pineapple helps reverse that or helps stop that. Pineapple prevents cancer in your stomach from meat by inhibiting the formation of those compounds. So good food. And all right, now let's talk about another aspect of animal protein. Those animals live out in the field. And when they're out there in the field, the farmer comes over and sprays the field with this and sprays the field with that, or the food they eat has all these sprays, or the animals eating GMO food, and herbicides and pesticides all have their own effect. Some of them have hormonal activity, much stronger than perhaps your own hormones. Some of those toxins or sprays have effects on inflammation. And well, if I went to a supermarket and I was looking for the food with the highest levels of, let's say, herbicides, what food do you think in the supermarket would have the highest levels of herbicides? Meat? Corn? Fish? Meat. Beef is the most dangerous food you can buy for herbicide contamination and is third in insecticide contamination. Why is that? Well, the animal's eating all that stuff that got sprayed, right? The animal's eating all that stuff that got coated, and he's out in the field when it's getting sprayed. And there's a biomagnification process that goes on. The herbs, whatever the herbs are, that the animal's going to eat, grass or whatever, might have a little bit of spray on them. If we look at a lake, for example, some lakes are polluted with DDT. It's breakdown product. In Clear Lake, California, for example. And so the plants had a little bit of DDT in them. The scientists then looked at the little tiny fish that ate the plants, and they had 10 times as much DDT. And then they looked at the big fish that ate the little fish, and they had 100 times as much DDT. Then the people come along and catch the fish. Well, they looked at the sea lions off the coast of California, and anything they got from fish, they magnified 240 times. So you're looking at, so the cow is, the end of that, the food chain there, and so they're going to be the ones that are the most loaded with these kind of things. What can I do to help with this? What do I do about all the toxins? Well, the cruciferous family of vegetables is very, very handy because it stops those toxins from binding to DNA. It helps your body to eliminate them, especially through the liver. You're having liver troubles like fatty liver or whatever. Eat more broccoli, eat more cabbage, eat more kale, eat more. And these are very, very good foods to help fight cancer. And so you've seen a number of things we've thrown in here that are good foods to fight cancer. But let's just go back over why meat is the number one cause of cancer. It's the protein, it's the fat, it's the hormones, it's the species-crossing viruses, it's the toxins. All these things contribute to why meat is the biggest cause of cancer. Well, now let's go on and think a little bit about the mechanism by which cancer is produced. Usually it's due to DNA changes in your body. DNA can be changed by viruses. They literally put their DNA or RNA into your DNA and make it so your body codes for things it's not supposed to code for. It makes your body into a manufacturing plant for viruses and other crazy things going on. Excuse me a minute. So, we need to figure out what to do with DNA. A virus got into it, or the toxins will bind to the DNA and change it, causing mutations. And fortunately, Providentially, God has put mechanisms in your body whereby the DNA is proofread. And the DNA is always being checked. And when it's always being checked, then it can be repaired. And when it's repaired, then you're less likely to get cancer. But if you fall behind on your DNA repair, you get cancer. Everybody here in this room has a few cancer cells running around, but your body's staying on top of it. Now, there's certain things, if you eat them, if you make them a part of your diet, it will stop the body from repairing DNA. One of those is caffeine. It stops DNA repair. And so cancers of the breast, colon, stomach, kidney, lung, and ovaries all increase when you use products with caffeine. Coffee, sports drinks, tea, chocolate, all these things. I mean, speaking of chocolate, 1/2 ounce of chocolate per day doubles the risk of prostate cancer. For a number of reasons. But in this case, we're talking about DNA damage not getting repaired. Now I want to pull up a very interesting study done by a lady who worked at NIH all her life. And she was in a position to sort of get interaction with sponsors and drug companies and scientists. And she was a scientist, she was a PhD. And she came up against manipulation of data a lot of times for financial reasons. And she wrote a whole, dissertation practically, on how modern medicine and modern practices contribute to cancer. And so in her study, she looked at the fact that in the early 1900s, cancer rates were very low, like 5%. And then after the introduction of mass vaccination and wonder drugs and antibiotics, what are antibiotics? Like penicillin, what is that? Mold. You think mold doesn't contribute to cancer? We'll get to a mold section here. If you've had penicillin, the more days accumulation of penicillin you've had, the higher your risk of cancer. Doesn't happen overnight. People have a hard time connecting the two, but the big research shows. So why do we have, we went from in women 5% to 33%, in men from 5% to 50% since the early 1900s. It's a lot of these wonder drugs and vaccinations. And so she wrote her whole dissertation article on that. And so we want to, let's get back to our DNA problems. We want to repair the DNA. How are we going to repair the DNA? Kiwi is a good one. It's high in vitamin C. It stimulates DNA repair. It boosts your antioxidants, and it helps reduce the damage to DNA. We're talking good fresh fruits and vegetables, right? You need to start looking at fresh fruits and vegetables as the main course, and your other things as less so. A lot of people become vegetarian, but they merely adopt a meat-avoidant diet, and they become grainitarians. Well, we said grains were good, but fresh fruits and vegetables are even better. Grains you have to cook, essentially. And so their nutrition doesn't always stay up to. You can sprout some, but the best thing is fresh fruits and vegetables eaten as grown. And another thing that messes with your DNA and also your risk of cancer is eating too much food. Wow, Americans eat about 40% more food than Okinawans, and they have 80% more cancer. Overeating doubles your risk of cancer. So we recommend the caloric restriction. Eat less food. Well, that's not popular. Well, it doesn't mean you have to eat less volume. Just eat more of the things that are healthy for you, and they're usually lower in calories. And so the Okinawans eat 40% fewer calories, 80% less breast and prostate cancers, 50% fewer ovarian and colon cancers. Eating less food. One way to eat less food is to eat fewer meals. 2-meal-a-day plan lowers the risk of cancer. Compared to the 2-meal-a-day program, colon cancer risk rises 70% for 3 meals a day, 90% for 4 meals a day. What's more, each additional snack time increases the risk of colon cancer another 60%. But my doctor told me to eat 8 little meals all day long for my diabetes or for my obesity or for... What do I do about that? Well, cancer patients lose weight too. But that's not the way to lose weight. So we want to make sure that we aren't doing things that's going to cause more problems. Fresh fruits and vegetables invigorate your immune system to fight cancer. Here's a study that looked at the number of grams eaten per day of fresh fruits and vegetables and the risk of cancer. And so you get up around 500 grams of fresh fruits and vegetables, and your cancer risk drops quite a bit. Isn't that the original diet, though? Aren't we talking about Adam's diet? The Bible diet? That's right. And now, let's talk about environment. People live indoors. Didn't used to be that way. People live indoors. So when I was growing up, I grew up on a farm. We would go to bed, get up in the morning, eat breakfast, and we weren't in the house all day until it came to lunchtime, and then we went outside. We weren't in the house until late in the evening. We were outdoors all day. Well, today, people get out of their house, jump in their car, and the windows are all, tinted or whatever. You don't get much sunlight. In the house, you have glass, right? Energy efficient glass. We had some friends. They had house plants. They wanted to put in new windows because the old windows were not efficient, and they wanted to heat their house more efficiently. They took out all their windows, put in glass windows. All the plants died. Well, when they took rats and they gave them cancer, and they put one group outdoors and one group indoors, the rats indoors, their cancer grew twice as fast, twice as big in the same amount of time. When we're indoors, there's a lot more toxins. When we're indoors, there's a lot less oxygen. When we're indoors, there's a lot less negative ions. There's a lot more things coming out of your new carpet, your new plastic linoleum floor, out of your curtains, your, this insulation board. They're thinking that insulation board is going to be the new tobacco. Anyway, it off-gases for a long time. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the most popular slide of all. Perfect health depends on perfect circulation. From a study here, European Journal of Cancer, women who do not wear bras had half the risk of breast cancer compared with bra users. You totally destroy circulation, all kinds of things go wrong, you overheat. And so who knows what's in those bras and synthetic materials? Interesting. Well, all right, let's talk about sunlight. People who get more sunlight get more vitamin D. That's a good thing, at least the studies show. But the vitamin D pills aren't a good substitute for sunlight. Have you heard of heliotherapy? How many have heard of heliotherapy? It's sun therapy. All right. Heliotherapy. And there's been doctors back in the last century in Switzerland who did nothing but put their patients out in the sun and cure cancer and tuberculosis and things like that. But we hide from the sun. We think that we're mushrooms or we're and the sun's scary, and then we lather on sunblock when we go out in the sun, but it's not so. We got to get out there in the sun. We got to get our sun, and it's not just vitamin D. Vitamin D comes from UVB. You need the infrared. You need the warmth. You need the warm rays of infrared penetrate like 3 inches, and it ups your intermitochondrial melatonin. It increases the antioxidants in your cells 3 inches deep in your body, and so you want lots of sunlight, especially if you have an autoimmune disease. But I'm on this drug. They say I have to stay out of the sun. Take the drug, go to the sun. Take the drug, go. Well, you got to choose. And right. And a lot of people, they aren't out in the day in the sun, but they get out at night. I was surprised. I used to live in Oklahoma City. Well, I didn't live in Oklahoma City. I lived outside of Oklahoma City, and at Oklahoma Academy. And I would drive into Oklahoma City once in a while, and there was this whole section of the beginning of the city where it just looked like there's nothing there. There was old factory buildings that seemed to be abandoned, and perhaps storefronts that just seemed to be abandoned, and nothing seemed to be. I thought, wow, this is a ghost town. And then one time, I went to the airport to pick up somebody coming in really late, and I came driving through that part of town, and it was like the whole city was there. There was all these shops were either bars or nightclubs, or the factory wasn't a factory; it was a dance hall, and there was people everywhere. And I'm thinking, there's a whole different group of people that come out after dark. They don't come out in broad daylight, and that's dangerous for cancer, because when you're under artificial light at night, it takes and wipes out your melatonin. Your risk of cancer goes up. If you're on a blue light device, computers, cell phones, iPads, whatever, after 3:30 in the afternoon, but especially after sundown, it wipes out your melatonin, messes with your sleep. If you mess with your sleep, then you're going to have more cancer. Okay, I said I would mention mold. My mom's house started smelling mold under the stairs. Mom, there's mold under your stairs. You got to clean this. So, builders came in, tore out the wall. The wall was full of mold. My mom got cancer. She got uterine cancer. My stepdad, he got prostate problems. Mold is a big, some people think cancer is a mold. There's no proof to that, but it's got some interesting parallels. And so when you are in mold-damaged buildings, a lot of people don't realize where the mold is at. You can smell it. You can buy little Petri dishes at Lowe's or Home Depot that you can put around and collect overnight, and then see it grow and see whether you have mold. But mold's a big deal. If you live in a swampy area, if your house is where there's always moisture in the air, more likely to have mold. But a lot of people think, I live in a new house, I live upstairs, I live on a hill, but they don't realize that the mold is in their food. Because a lot of these foods that are fermented, aged, rotted, spoiled, have mold. Alcoholic beverages, vinegar, cheese, sour cream, yogurt, soy sauce, sauerkraut, salami, chocolate, vanilla, brown rice syrup, nutritional yeast. All these things are going to have those same aflatoxins, mycotoxins, cancer-causing toxins. I mean, you look at soy sauce, it's fermented. If you use soy sauce instead of just drinking soy milk, your risk of cancer goes up 58%. The fermenting process does not help the food get better. Fermentation just means some other animal ate your food before you got to eat it. Whether it was a bacteria, a fungi, a virus, or whatever. And then they leave behind their waste products. And then you're eating their waste products. And the waste products don't have more nutrition than the original food. But why do some people think I got to eat something fermented? Oh, it's for the probiotic. You can get probiotics just by eating fresh cabbage that's never been rotted. If you look at fresh cabbage that's never been rotted under an electron microscope, you think it's all bacteria, or at least half bacteria. All kinds of bacteria. And you don't need to eat something rotten to get bacteria. Now, in our modern age, we have better living through chemistry. Right? better living. Remember the days when your peanut butter came in a glass jar? And now it's in a plastic jar. And your milk came in a carton, and now it comes in a plastic jug. And your juice came in a glass bottle, and now it comes in a plastic jug. And your Cheerios are now, everything's in a plastic bag. And those people that are working hard to make sure you have all those plastic products are dying of cancer at a higher rate than you are, because they have to deal with all those chemicals. 5 times the risk of cancer. And so we've become the people of the plastic bag, the plastic jar, the plastic jug. And then oils come in a plastic jar. And the oils are going to soak up and dissolve some of that plastic. And the butter comes in a plastic dish. And then there's the whole thing of what they're doing to our food to make sure that, the farmer doesn't have to kill worms anymore, because the corn is the pesticide. And when they feed that pesticide corn to rats, only 11% of their diet, they get cancer. Massive cancer. GMO corn. Or if they give the rats the water, like municipal water from cities that has Roundup in it, the amount of Roundup allowed in American city water processing plants for people is the amount they give these rats. And the rat on the very end down there got nothing but a little bit of Roundup, parts per billion, and he got cancer. Why did they have all this Roundup? Because the corn or the soybeans are genetically modified to resist Roundup. What does Roundup do anyway? What was Roundup originally? It was originally to be a chelating agent for cleaning out pipes. What is it really? Well, why do people like soy sauce? High MSG. What's MSG? Monosodium glutamate. What's monosodium glutamate? It's a free protein, glutamate. What's Roundup? It's a free protein, glycine, with a phosphonoside group. It's a messed up protein. And so your body looks at it as protein. It gets incorporated. It's twisted protein. And so it causes cancer, big time. Do they like to talk about it? No. What does it do to your kidneys? Look at the top row there. People get kidney failure from spraying glyphosate or Roundup around their houses and their plants, or eating food with Roundup. And everybody has a little Roundup in them from food out there. And I had a friend that was growing seed kamut. He was a big farmer growing the seed for growing kamut, which is a wheat type grain. And his seed would be used by organic farmers to produce kamut. And so they especially had him grow it a certain way, and they checked him, and they checked it, and they said, "Oh, wonderful. Your seed kamut has less Roundup than our organic kamut." I'm like, wait a minute. Your organic is not supposed to have any. They said it's unavoidable. It's everywhere. So our planet, what do I do to get rid of Roundup? Exercise, cruciferous vegetables, fiber. Those all help get rid of Roundup out of your body. Exercise, cruciferous vegetables, high fiber diet. All right, drinking water. And when you drink more water, you expel more toxins, whether it's through urine, whether it's through sweat, whether it's out of your lungs. When you drink more water, you help to dilute the toxins. When you drink more water, your body starts to... And when you sweat more, when you drink more water, the sweat does not get more dilute like your urine gets more dilute when you drink more water. It gets more thick with toxins. So drinking lots of water and sweating, and maybe go to the sauna and sweat some out, that's a very good thing to do. Now, let's see. What am I looking for? Where's my cell phone? I don't have one on me. Why don't I have one on me? Because those electromagnetic fields, they cause cancer. Study after study. You hold the cell phone to this side of your head, acoustic neuroma, glioma, brain cancer, ear cancer. People stick the thing in their, women put it in their pocket by their breast. That's the breast that'll get the cancer. I mean, it's like, wow. And what's more, it changes the blood flow in your body. It causes the blood to all stick together in what we call rouleau, chains of red blood cells. It's a challenge. We could do a whole talk on EMF, but be aware that when you have Wi-Fi and cell phone towers, and towns with more cell phone towers have more cancer, and if you live within 400 feet of a cell phone tower, your risk of diabetes goes way up, and cancer, and it's like, we live in an interesting age. There's a reason why cancer's gone from 5% to 30 to 50%. Another thing that will do it is watching TV. Multiple studies out of Australia that every hour you spend in front of that television will raise, or other entertainment will raise your risk of cancer by 9%. Spend 10 hours in front of it, you're up at 90% increased risk of cancer. It's probably the stress, it's probably the EMF, but epidemiologically, those studies keep coming up. Now, we've got to hit the big one. Some people, let's say there's two groups of people, but they do everything wrong that we've been talking about here so far. They eat meat, they use oil, but this group has a lot of stress, and this group has no stress. Who's going to get the cancer? The stressed ones, that's right. Cancer death rate increases 40% in people who have poor interpersonal skills and are always stressed. I found it interesting in Proverbs from today's English version, peace of mind makes the body healthy, but jealousy is like a cancer. Isn't that interesting? Right. And so the studies have come out that people with good spiritual health have less disease, longer life expectancy, lower cancer rates, less anxiety, less depression. They have better immune systems. So we have to go to the real stress reliever, don't we? That's why we come to church, and that's why we share with one another, and come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden. That's why we come to the Lord, isn't it? And I will give you rest. Is there rest anywhere else? There's no rest nowhere else, is there? And so people with a good attitude do well. People who are grateful. An attitude of gratitude significantly predicts longevity in breast cancer survivors. People who are grateful, not just to be alive because they didn't die of their breast cancer, but because they have an attitude of being thankful. Really, thankfulness is the first step toward heaven. Did you know that? Christianity is all about thankfulness. We're thankful to the Lord. It's gratitude. People who make a gratitude journal and write down every day maybe 10 things for which they're thankful, at the end of 6 months of doing that, their happiness will almost equal that of somebody who just won the lottery. Studies show that. And so, yeah. Another thing that we do when we're taking our religion seriously, because we said that people who are religious have better longevity, is being helpful to others. And I touched on this morning, but being helpful to others, supportive to friends, neighbors, relatives, spouse, significantly improves the survival odds. People who volunteer are much more likely to survive. It is more blessed to give than to receive. Well, the time will come when there is no more cancer, there is no more death, there is no more sorrow, there is no more pain. Revelation speaks of this. I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying. Neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Boy, that'll be good. Yes. Well, let's summarize. Doing it well. Take advantage of all the benefits in foods as grown. Animal products. Avoid animal products high in protein, fat, viruses, toxins, and growth hormones. Avoid foods and substances that damage DNA and suppress the immune system, like sugar, animal products, tobacco, alcohol, caffeine, heavy metals, and pesticides. Choose a lifestyle and diet which expels toxins from your body, invigorates your immune system, and keeps you at peak physical, mental, and spiritual performance. Exercise. Exercise in the open air. Exercise in the sunlight. Drink plenty of pure water. Rest. Get your rest at night. And rest in God's love and providence. All right. And let's see now. Northern Lights Health Education. There's our website. And if you go to the website, over on the left-hand column there, you'll see presentation handouts. You can print out a presentation handout on cancer or on all the other topics that we cover here. And so there you go. All right. Time for a few questions, huh? A few questions, and then we'll go into the next one. Yes, over here. Maybe, do you want a microphone for them or no? Okay. We'll get you mic'd here, and then everybody can hear you. Right back here. Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned sunlight. How about red light therapy and infrared?
Good question. And you know, that kind of highlights what I spoke about earlier, that you don't just need vitamin D from UVB, you need the infrared. And so the red light therapy is just trying to reproduce the infrared. And so there are benefits. There are, and so at Eden Valley, when we were treating patients, we often had them using infrared saunas or infrared domes over cancer areas. And so the infrared penetrates quite deeply. Far infrared is one that goes a little deeper. And so there's benefits. I wouldn't, though, personally, I think the best thing is to get your infrared naturally from the sun. But if that's not possible because you work all day and indoors, then some of these substitute artificial things have their benefits. Just make sure they aren't high EMF.
Did I understand correctly that you said nutritional yeast is not good for you?
Nutritional yeast is a fungi. People with allergies to mushrooms will also have allergies to nutritional yeast. It's a crossover. Nutritional yeast will have your mycotoxins and things like that aren't good for you. I have a whole article on my website on nutritional yeast. You can get all the research details on why it's not good for you. When they originally were making MSG, yeast could be used to make MSG, and when you kill the yeast to make it into nutritional yeast, you end up with a high level of MSG. So the industry has decided that people don't like to see on their product label that it has MSG, so they just put in yeast nutrients. Same thing, they just loaded your product with MSG through yeast nutrients. So it's not a great thing to, and you think, well, I have to eat it for my B vitamins. The reason nutritional yeast has B vitamins is the same reason your cornflakes have B vitamins. They sprayed it on there. It didn't come there naturally. So just get your B vitamins some other way.
Right over here.
Hi. I had a friend or somebody died from small cell carcinoma, and what they did with that person, they helped them detoxify their body, and after they detoxified it, they build up the immune system back again and help that person live a little bit longer.
Amen, and that's what you want to do. You want to boost your immune system. So this is a talk on prevention, but if you're treating cancer, you want to boost the immune system to fight the cancer. The alternatives are that in the regular system, they try to poison the cancer, radiation, chemotherapy, or they try to cut it out, and a big surgery will lower your immune system.
Since you took cereal and eggs out of my breakfast, what are you recommending?
What I recommend for breakfast is whole grains, like oatmeal or granola or that kind of thing, but make your breakfast 80% fresh fruit. Fresh fruits are very good and nutrient dense. They have a lot of things for fighting cancer, and there's all kinds of good fruits out there. And we eat lots of fruit. I remember one place we went to do a series like this, and the family said, well, let's go out and do a little shopping ahead of time. We said, okay. They took us to the supermarket, and we said, well, they got like 2 bananas. And we said, no, we want 3 hands. They're like, 3 hands? They got 1 apple. And no, we want a whole bag. Because we eat lots of fresh fruit. And you can make fruit salads. You can make fruit, you just eat the fruit whole. Or a lot of times we'll make a fruit salad and put it on like a waffle, or mix it in with our granola, or with our oatmeal, or with cornbread, or whatever. But the more fresh fruit you eat, I mean, what do you think Adam and Eve ate? Probably not microwave biscuits. Probably fresh fruit. And so, yeah. Sorry?
Let her go first.
2 quick questions. Sweeteners, like stevia, monk fruit, because you're talking about waffles and granola, there's no sugar, so what would you use, if any at all? And then vitamin D, since I've had my last 2, they've told me I need to take vitamin D drops and put them on me so that the baby can get it, 'cause it's not in the breast milk. And so babies who are breastfed have very weak bones. Tell me about that if you know anything about it, because I'm like, that's really strange that the Lord would make the breast milk to be insufficient in that way. So.
Interesting. The things they come up with to sell you another pill, right? Or another product. Okay, so sweeteners, when we make granola, we use either dates or bananas, or we use a little maple syrup, although I'm not as big a favor of that. But we use honey. Do we use monk fruit? We don't tend to use monk fruit. I haven't done a lot of research on monk fruit. Stevia, for those who like it, it's good. You want stevia, not Truvia, which is DuPont Laboratories' version of stevia. Stevia is a green plant, not a white powder, so the green one's probably better. But you can grow your own stevia. We did for a while, and the leaves have this sweet flavor. So does that answer that question? Okay, how about the vitamin D drops? Vitamin D has become a whole industry. It's strange that everybody on the planet is vitamin D deficient. How'd that happen? And when you take vitamin D, a lot of it, your milk is vitamin D fortified, usually from vitamin D from the pork, the pig slaughter plant. It's not from vegetarian sources. It's from animal fat. Are we told something in the Bible about not using animal fat? Yeah. You can get vitamin D that's from lichen or nutritional yeast. But it's hard to find a good source of it that's really not from something that's already objectionable for other reasons. But that said, when you take it as a large dose, it is a hormone. It has properties that make you retain calcium. You get too much of it, you'll start depositing calcium in your coronary arteries. That's a bad sign for heart disease. It'll deposit in your tendons, calcific tendonitis, that's painful. And so I say let your body sort of manage the calcium on its own without playing games. Get your sunlight for your vitamin D and especially for your infrared. And we weren't made to run on supplements. Supplements have a lot of downsides. And vitamin E, carcinogenic. Vitamin A, carcinogenic. Folic acid, carcinogenic. Don't use any pills with any of those in them.
Yes, you showed a slide, does sugar feed cancer? And you showed that it increased different types of cancer. How much sugar were you talking about? A tablespoon, teaspoon?
Usually we say 16 teaspoons puts you over the top. But a breakfast of cornflakes and milk and orange juice will give you 16 teaspoons of sugar. And there wasn't any sugar added to any of those, right?
Okay. What I wanted to know is, for instance, fruits, especially fruits, that are, there just seems so many of them are contaminated with the DDT and the bug sprays and this and that. You can't peel a strawberry For instance, in a strawberry, it has little indentations in it, just like our skin, where that DDT gets down in there. How can you take fresh strawberries and wash them and say, oh, you know, or maybe I'll just have one out of the box and eat it? It's poisonous. They spray apples, and people don't realize that the poisons get down in that thin skin of the fruit. Even cherries, plums. Are we all supposed to go to organic and think that the organic is healthier than the other fruits?
Good question. Thank you. That's a very important aspect because we all have to eat. But just harking back to that slide on the cows having more pesticides than all the fruits and vegetables, we have to realize that when we're eating fresh fruits and vegetables, a lot of times those fresh fruits and vegetables have the antidote for the little bit of pesticide that might be there. But that said, there are what they call the dirty dozen, or ones that are especially bad. And strawberries, we don't eat strawberries that aren't organic if we can help it, and we grow our own, so we don't put anything on them. But best thing is, grow your own gardens. But so strawberries, I was out in Watsonville, California, where they grow the strawberries, and a lady came up to me and says, I was a school teacher here in town. I want you to have this document. This is a list of the 13 poisons they put on strawberries. Had everything from stuff to kill birds. Oh, you're getting a little bigger than an insect now. And I'm bigger than an insect, and if it kills a bird, maybe it'll kill me. It was like scary. And the nerve gas, malathion, parathion, all kinds of stuff. And she said, I was a school teacher here. They're spraying the strawberry fields all around the school. All my students are getting sick. And so she went up to the State House and started lobbying for stopping all that. You think you're going to stop a billion-dollar industry or whatever it is, $1 million? So yeah, it's a hard thing. But so here's the difference between organic, if it's truly organic. There's a lot more organic food sold than grown, but if it's truly organic, then the pesticides are supposed to be surface. In other words, yes, they're on the surface, whereas the conventional ones, they're systemic. For example, bananas, when they want to kill the spiders so the spiders won't come with the batch of bananas to America, they put the poison on the ground. It goes into the plant, up in the bananas, and kills the spiders. It's systemic. Conventional apples, it's systemic. I can tell by eating an apple whether it's conventional or organic, just by the flavor. I mean, it's systemic. So, but what about cleaning it? Good things, one thing to do is get a good vegetable wash. A good vegetable wash, if you want to do it yourself, is make charcoal water and put the fruit in it overnight. That'll take some stuff out. There's also these ozone vegetable wash machines. Those make great claims and show some research that people who are using that don't pee out as many pesticides after they've been using that as when they're eating food that hasn't been. But the other thing is, pray over your food. That's probably the most important right there, because growing your own garden is really. So we've been gardening now. We moved out to country property. I kind of went kicking and screaming. If I was going to have a country property, I want a city house with all the amenities out in the country. Now we moved out in rocks and trees, and we've carved our niche out of the. We make our own soil and harvest our own water. And who's next? Okay.
You mentioned fermentation. What are your thoughts on sourdough? And also, I'd like to hear what you think about coconut oil.
All right. Wow, some of these topics take a lot of discussion. What I think I'll do, in the interest of time, is send you to my website, where, if you look up there, there's newsletters or written materials. I have a whole article on coconut oil. I have a whole article on, what was the other one? Sourdough. I have a whole article on sourdough. I have a whole article on oil in your bread. And so you can read the whole, it's got all the research with it too. It isn't just my idea there. You want the short answer, the Reader's Digest. Sourdough, okay, so yeast bread, when you raise it, it's 99% yeast raising it. When you make sourdough, it's 99% bacteria raising it. The bacteria are fermenters. The ones that make gas are not the best fermenters. The gas is what raises the bread. So there is going to be 7 toxic products in sourdough bread, including ethanol, alcohol, lots of aldehydes, even like formaldehyde. And it also increases the free glutamate. That's why people like the flavor. A lot more monosodium glutamate in sourdough bread. And so sourdough bread will have a lot more toxins. Even yeast bread, you want to go through a process of drying it and off-gassing it. And, don't eat it fresh. But sourdough is even less healthy, less good for you. And they have the whole article on it on my website with all the other reasons that I can't think of off the top of my head. And the second one was the coconut oil. Right. It's just vegetable lard, basically. And the stuff you buy in the store is not what comes from coconuts over in the Philippines. I've made coconut oil in the islands. The stuff is liquid. The stuff we get over here is white, solid at room temperature. It's not coconut oil.
I have a question about lectins in the diet and how it can disrupt the GI lining. Is there any research in its relationship, correlation with increased cancer?
The correlation is that lectins actually decrease cancer. And Dr. Gundry is a bit of a spin artist, and his lectins ideas, the idea that every lectin's bad and tomatoes aren't good for you and blah, 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 is not founded in research.
I'd like to know about mushrooms as a fungus.
Mushrooms are not a plant. We talked here about the original diet and every fruit-bearing seed and so forth. They don't have a seed, they have a spore. They don't photosynthesize, they suck up everything they grow on from what they're growing on underground. And when you have a mushroom prop up, it is just the fruiting body of a huge underground fungus that is a scavenger. And what it scavenges goes into the mushroom. Mushrooms over and over in multiple studies have high levels of carcinogens that cause cancer. Even these little button mushrooms you get down at Walmart in the tubs, they are cancer causing. And they aren't good food. They don't have antioxidants, and the whole idea that you're going to cure cancer with them or whatever is just made up. We live near a mushroom factory. Growing and it's all dark, it's all moldy, it's a terrible place to have to go in and find anybody that works there to see if you can buy some of their mushroom products for your garden out the back, but it's not good food.
Okay. And I want to know if this is safe, if it works. Grapefruit seed extract, salt, and white vinegar to soak my some vegetables, not all of them, and fruits to be washed. I've soaked grapes in them, and they really the water comes out really nasty. But I want to know if it's safe to do that, and if it works for practically everything we eat.
Right, there's a lot of different things people use to wash vegetables, and vinegar's one of them. But vinegar comes from rotten apples, or most of the vinegar in the United States, white vinegar comes from rotten apples. What happens if I take a rotten apple and I throw it in with a bunch of good apples? What happens to good apples? They all go bad. So why would I take the juice of that apple and wash all my vegetables in it? It doesn't make sense. And so I use vinegar maybe for cleaning something, but it wouldn't be my food. It would be my bathroom or something, yeah. I don't know much about grapefruit seed extract. I haven't studied it. I mean, I know its uses. I know what people use it for. But I haven't looked in to see whether it's good or bad or indifferent.
Yeah, on this side here. We use the CPAP equipment every night, and occasionally, regularly have to clean it. And the equipment that we have or was available in the drugstores was producing ozone. And you push the ozone air through the tubes and everything else that's involved. Is there any problem with the ozone? Because years back when I was in my lab, we used an ozone machine to clean the air in a laboratory. And they told us it's not safe. So I didn't turn it on.
So is ozone safe or not?
Yeah.
You don't necessarily want to be breathing it, but it is good for helping to get rid of mold out of things or killing mold spores. So it's a very strong oxidant for which you take and eat antioxidants. But sometimes when we have somebody that has a very moldy house or moldy ventilation system, we might say, clean it up as best you can and then stick an ozone generator in there, but don't be in there while it's generating. Air out the place or blow out the tubes or whatever so you're not breathing the stuff. Yes. Well, we better start in on our next lecture pretty soon, huh? But go ahead. Yeah.
Last question. Water. So we have well water, but it also doesn't have fluoride, which is what they say you need for the children's teeth and stuff. What are your thoughts on using well water and fluoride?
Okay. Her question's about fluoride in teeth, really. I think the fluoride for your teeth is a red herring and used to fluoridate the population, just like they fluoridated prisoners of war to keep them calm and sedate and not cause trouble. And the proof on the fillings in your teeth, or your teeth, is very iffy. And fluoride in your bones makes them brittle and isn't always the best thing. And so you don't need to go looking for extra fluoride. Well water can be good. You just want to make sure you test it once in a while. Things that can get in well water from agricultural areas are nitrates and pesticides. And so if you do have well water that isn't too good, you want to run it through a filter, carbon filter, charcoal filter, something like that. Yeah, we'll take a break and then we'll...
One more.
One last
So we'll do one
Thank
last, and
you.
then we're going to take a break.
You mentioned the 5G phones. What about the 4G? Because I recently heard a news that they're even higher than the 5G. If true or not, I have no idea.
Any G phones, if it's 1G, 2, 3, any of these electromagnetic RF generators, the thing that's the problem is that when it's used for communication, the waves are unpredictable. I mean, they're irregular, and they mess with your body rhythms. They mess with your calcium channels in your body, changing potentials across cells. Your cells are like a battery. This messes with that battery. It messes with your nerves. It punches holes in your blood-brain barrier. And we have a lot of experience with high EMF. Well, I could give you a whole discussion on that. We're currently looking for another low EMF vehicle. We have a little meter that we check all these vehicles and annoy used car salesmen.
Feet. And then what's the last one for today? Ideal weight. Oh, ideal weight. Yes. So, and then tomorrow morning, just in case anybody happens to, I think it's I don't know. Oh yeah, there you go. Tomorrow morning, just in case anybody's leaving, and we're doing the charcoal remedies, and Julia, is going to be giving all the different ways that you can use charcoal. And what else is on there? I don't have mine in front of me. I just want to make sure, just in case people, because I know some people might not stay, and I hope you do. Tomorrow we have the history of charcoal, nature's remedy at 9 a.m. to 11 with lots of questions that you can ask. And that at 11 to 1, the charcoal clinical applications and Q&A, healthy principles for everyday lifestyle. And all of these, you have questions you can ask. And then the last one is living free and open conversation with free consultations with Dr. Clark. And he also has a very wonderful book. So hopefully you'll be here for tomorrow. So 15, we'll see you in 15.